Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and we've had so much racial controversy occurring in the last couple of months. I mean, really, this is one of the most extraordinary times in the black community, maybe in the last 20, 30 years. There's a lot to discuss, and there are people that I love to discuss it with. And so, two people I brought on are regulars with Your Black World that you've probably seen before. The first is Miss Yvette Carnell from BreakingBrown.com. First, I want to ask Yvette, how you doing today?
Good, boys. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. And next, I have, last but not least, Mr. Benjamin Dixon from thebenjamindixonshow.com. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing great, Dr. Watkins. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm so glad to have both of you here. Now, I wanted to allow for a broader dialogue on something that you two brought up this week. You two had, very different opinions about this whole sort of forgiveness politics, the politics of forgiveness. I don't know how often
It's a good
people
book
use that
title.
term, but that's kind of what it
Yeah,
is, right?
yeah,
Where you had the unfortunate incident with Dylan Roof going into the Emmanuel AME Church and killing 9 people, and then the first thing you're hearing in media is when Roof goes into the courtroom and you're hearing, "I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you." Well, I know Yvette well enough to know this probably pissed her off, and she actually said it in the video. I mean, Yvette kind of broke it down. Stop forgiving, stop praying, stop doing all this, and start standing up for yourself, and maybe people will respect you. But then Ben came along, and again, Ben in a very respectful way, yet firm way, because Ben is a strong man. He said, "Look, Ben has a tradition from the church. If I'm not mistaken, are you Southern Baptist? Would that be an accurate description?"
I'm something. Just pray for me, but I did grow up in the church. I can't say that I'm necessarily there right now, but I'm something there.
How you gonna say I'm something? Like
You know what?
how
Definitely not.
non-committal is that? I'm messing with
I can tell you, it's definitely not Southern Baptist. So
you.
it's
Okay.
not Southern Baptist. But you know what? I definitely identify with church tradition.
Mm.
Grew up in it, and so definitely bring a counterpoint to the conversation.
Okay, and so Ben is connected to the church tradition, and he did a good job of laying out his points in terms of the value of forgiveness, not letting it eat away at you, and forgiveness not necessarily meaning that you're exonerating the person of any guilt or responsibility for what they did. And I literally have to confess, and I told you to this. I watched Ben's video first because that was the first one I saw, and then I saw Yvette's video. And each time, as each of you were making your points, it was almost like being in the courtroom. Have you been in the courtroom and seen, you see the defense attorney talk, and you're like, and you listen to the defense attorney say, and you're like, man, that's an innocent person. They're about to send an innocent person to jail, and then you hear the prosecutor, and you're like, that mug is guilty, because the arguments are so strong. So I wanted to kind of lay out this conversation. I appreciate the two of you, joining together to talk about this. So first, I'll start with Yvette. Ladies first. Tell me, what is wrong with just the idea of forgiveness, or what is your perception in terms of the black church sort of being seen as being passive, or whatever the case may be?
I don't think there's anything wrong with the idea of forgiveness. I mean, if you wanna forgive in your own heart, if that's what you feel is best for you emotionally, for you to get by, I don't think anybody can tell you that you can't do that. I don't think you want to take that to the courtroom, though, because that's not the church. That's not your local tabernacle. So my position is, if you want to do that, I think religion is a personal thing. I think religion should be a private thing. Just like I don't agree with a theocracy in America. I
Mhm.
don't. That was my problem with the same sex marriage argument. People saying, "Well, it's wrong." Well, it's wrong based on what? Your Bible? Your Bible shouldn't apply to everybody. So my
Right.
whole thing is, if you need to forgive, if that's what you feel, I can't get through this unless I forgive this white man who just, days ago murdered 9 black people. If that's what you think you feel, I don't feel that's what I need. I feel I can channel that rage and do something with it. But if that's what you feel you need in your heart of hearts, go ahead and do that. But don't bring that to the courtroom, especially before we haven't even gotten justice yet. I had a friend say something on a few days ago. There was a video. And the video was of these church members at the church burnings. And one person said, "Well, I forgive the person who burned down the church." You don't even know who burned the church yet.
Right.
You have no idea. That person hasn't gone to jail. That person hasn't been tried, and you have already forgiven them. I mean, it's like fast food forgiveness. You just drive through the window and you got it immediately. And we don't require anything for it. We don't say, well, we need this, or, we can forgive if this happens. It's just like, well, we're Negroes and that's what we do. And so we're domesticated and we're docile and we forgive. So that's my position. I don't think it's tactically, I don't think it benefits us to be so quick and so forgiving. And then even if you're going to do that, to be so public with it. Once this person goes to trial, let the judge and the jury and the prosecutor and everybody else deal with that so you can get justice for your family. Don't come to court talking about what you forgive. Leave that. That's for your church. That's for your house. That's for your fellow parishioners. Leave. This is a secular society. Leave us alone with it. Don't do that. It does not good for us. It hasn't benefited us.
Okay, so Ben, I mean, it seems that Yvette does have a point that there's a difference between how you feel personally, and then there's sort of the bigger societal, political dimension of it, right?
Right.
You might feel one way, and have some right to express that because you've been the victim that or the person, you're at the center of the controversy, but there's more at stake, right? There's a whole legacy of racial inequality, racial injustice, racial terror that we're trying to confront. So what do you say to those who might say, look, you can forgive in your heart, you can forgive after the fact later on, you can forgive in private. You don't have to make forgiveness the first thing you scream in the courtroom when the guy walks in the room.
I would say, I mean, to be honest with you, it's none of our business when they decide to forgive. They're the people that are broken. They're the ones that have suffered. They're the ones who have been through a tragedy that none of us have been through, thankfully, and hopefully none of us will ever have to go through. So how are we in a position to be able to dictate to people how and when and where they can start their healing process when they haven't even buried this guy, their family members yet? Now, to the point that Yvette, that you mentioned with regards to that church that burned, that was the guy who got on the video. I saw the same video. That was utter ridiculousness. It was foolish because he didn't know who did it. And it turns out that, so far, the evidence is not pointing towards arson. We'll see what it ends up being, but they're saying it's most likely a lightning strike. So who is he forgiving? God, right? So that makes no sense anywhere around the world. So in that regard, I agreed with you 100%. But with regard to this family, this was their only chance to see that man technically face to face, even though they copped out and put him inside of a video booth. They thought they were going to see him face to face. And if this is where they need to begin their healing process, they have the rest of their lives to mourn. I just don't think that we're in any position as a Black community to say, no, put aside your personal pain and pick up the fight when they still have to bury their dead. Our job is to fight. Our job is to not forgive, because we don't have to forgive. We're the ones that get out in the streets and do whatever's necessary to stop these things from happening. But I've seen more people, and in all fairness, Yvette, to your video, you only mentioned it briefly, right? You mentioned it and then you went off into some other salient points. But I've heard it incessantly through the week of people just condemning these families about forgiving. And it's just, to me, it's the height of absurdity for us to be able to put ourselves as the adjudicator of their pain. We don't have the right to do that. Our job is to go out and fight for them because they're wounded, they're hurting. Now, why aren't we out in the streets doing what we're expecting them to do in their pain?
Yvette, what do you say to that?
Well, the first point I would make is this. I don't think we have to adjudicate their pain, because in this case, I think the person who killed their family members has been arrested, and that will play out in court. Now, I think if he is not convicted or something happens, then that is our responsibility. With regard to whose business this is, in terms of we don't have the right to tell them how to feel, the one thing that I would point out is that when they went to this courtroom with all these cameras around and the press and the world is watching, and they made this public, this public forgiveness, kind of event or spectacle or whatever you want to call it. When they did that, you made it my business because you made it public. Now, if you had been at home and somebody came out of your house and said they're inside praying, that's not my business. That's your house. But the public courtroom, what is, I'm not even a Christian, but there's something in the Bible about render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's not yours. So when you go into that public space, you make that my business. And let me tell you what happened after they went into this public space and publicly forgave this racist, degenerate thug. After they did that, the whole media narrative changed. We went from talking about this guy and talking about white supremacists who have surged. The number of white supremacists and white supremacist groups since Obama has been in office has skyrocketed. We had started talking about that. We had started talking about Dylan Roof and what drove him we had started talking about a lot of things until this family went into that courtroom. And all of a sudden, the New York Times, front page story is forgiveness because we gave them a distraction. So what I say to that is, listen, we all either strategically work together in this or we don't. And the last thing I want to give the media is another story. I don't want to give you a story about these black people forgiving in the church. I want you to focus on what's wrong with this country, this racism, these individual races, this systemic racism. And let me tell you, when these things happen, the media will do whatever they can do to get you off the topic. So now we're talking about, oh, look how nice these black people are for forgiving. And they pat us on the head. You all have done this so long, and you all are you're such long suffering Negroes. We respect you so much. But really and truthfully, we all know that the only thing that these people respect is wealth and violence. If somebody can point me in the direction that shows that they respect anything else, I will gladly listen to you. And so that's just how I feel in terms of why that was bad for the black community and why that moment was not a personal moment for those families.
Ben?
So it becomes reactionary then. It becomes we are waiting on the press to tell us what the narrative is when we have enough things in the past that we should have burned shit down a long time ago. We should have been out in the streets on a consistent basis a long time ago. And if we're waiting on the press to dictate to us what the narrative is going to be, we've already lost. And what's worse is I was reading, I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't run away from stuff. I read a lot of the comments on my video, which was kind of fun. A lot of people were saying that they were waiting for these families to stand up and mobilize the movement. And I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing for two reasons. They haven't buried their family members yet. And then the second reason is if we are waiting for someone to set off the revolution, it's never coming. If we are not taking our responsibility and say enough has already been enough, it was enough before South Carolina. So I don't need those families to set a narrative. I need those families to do whatever they need to do to heal. And then for us, it's already been enough. And so instead of we started to lick our wounds and say, oh, the narrative is about forgiveness and we're mad at them when we could set the narrative. We have enough power. We have enough outlets. We have enough voices that when we want to set the narrative, Oscar's so white, we set the narrative. Black Lives Matter, we set the narrative. Who's burning down our churches? They are finally catching on to that narrative. So we have the ability, but we've been so reactionary. And now some people did not go along with what we think should have been the strategy. And we just throw our hands up and say, oh, hell, these Negroes are shucking and jiving. No, these Negroes are trying to heal while these social justice, social media warriors are criticizing them. But we need them in the streets. Why aren't they in the streets doing all of the things that they expected these families to do?
Well, one thing I'm curious about is, and I hear both of your points, and I think they're well-spoken, valid points. And because I don't believe that there's always a right or wrong answer, because we know that in the background there is white supremacy. In that when you talk about media narratives being shaped, who's shaping these narratives, right? It's the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the Fox Newses and the New York Times and all these outlets that are not controlled by black people. Even the Griot and the Root and all these other black media, so-called black media outlets are not owned by black people. So we got to really think about that. Where are these stories coming from? But one thing I'm curious about, and either one of you can jump in and answer this if you want to, but I was thinking about just the fact that merely by being the victim of something that draws so much national outrage, you are a de facto symbol of what could become a movement or could become something else. And I think about when Rodney King got beat that time, back in the day, which was really sort of the flashpoint in the beginning of this fight against police brutality in terms of videotaping what the police were doing. I remember when Rodney King went on TV, and remember what he said? Can't we all just get along? And I remember how black people were mad at him. I was mad. I was like, what's this fool talking about? He needs to shut up right now. Either shut up or stand up. One of the two. But don't come out here as a tool for promoting passive behavior amongst black people, because that's what's getting us killed in the first place. And I asked myself, I say, I wonder what would have happened if Emmett Till's mother, instead of demanding that he have an open casket funeral so the public could see what happened to her son, if she'd said, no, I forgive the men who did this to my son. I wonder what would have happened with that movement. Or if you look at Medgar Evers and his wife and the strength that she showed all those years, Betty Shabazz, Martin Luther King's wife, etc. What if not that Betty was Martin's wife, you know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if they'd handled it in a different way. If the first thing they'd said was, "I forgive the people who did this to my family," would that have reshaped how things happened after that point? What do you all think? Either one of you can jump in.
I
Yvette?
mean, I think it's clear now. Somebody can point me back, to Coretta Scott King's comments after King was assassinated. But I don't even remember her coming to the forefront immediately and saying, let's just all just forgive. And we're talking about Dr. King. So, you have to understand that as these people, whether they like it or not, it's not fair. I'm not saying it's fair at all, but you have been thrust into a position, and what you do and say after your loved one has been murdered is critical. And I think it's very interesting that after 9/11, and those Americans were killed in that, in the Trade Center, I didn't hear anybody running to the government saying, oh, we got to forgive all these terrorists, these Arabs, we got to forgive them all. I don't remember hearing anybody saying that we should forgive ISIS for beheading people and putting them in cages and setting them on fire. Because I think people realize that you set a tone and you say, listen, what we want here isn't individual forgiveness. We're out for retribution. When that stuff happened, America sent bombs. So I think people react to you based on the tone you set for yourself, based on how much Black lives matter to you. And if Black lives don't matter to you enough to just be like, I want to see this guy, I want to see you rot, I want to see you in jail for the rest of your life. Forget forgiveness for a minute. I'm not saying you can't eventually do that, but if Black lives don't matter, then how do Black lives matter? If the minute something happens, I mean, these bodies weren't even buried before these people went on national TV and started talking about, we forgive you and may God bless you. And I mean, look, I don't mean to go off on a religious thing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. None of us knows what happens after we live this thing. And nobody ever came back to me and be like, you know what, Yvette, it's pretty cool. You go and you do some stuff, you go to heaven, you drink wine. I like wine. You drink wine and you have fun. Like, nobody's ever said that to me. So none of us know. But I do know what happens on this planet. And I think people should be focused on that. And so to focus on this otherworldly thing when we have real stuff that is beating Black people down right now, I think is a mistake. I think it's a mistake we've made for too long. And I think it's time for us to let that go because it's not working. We always say it all around the world. Black people are the most, look at on the totem pole. Black people are always on the bottom, and we're the most religious people out there. You gotta look at that and say, maybe we're doing something wrong.
Now, Ben, now you get to see what I fight against every day, right? I still remember. I still remember getting a text. I got a text from Michael Eric Dyson one time. We were talking about him. I don't think I told you that, but he said, tell Yvette Carnell I want to say thank you for whooping your ass on that conversation that you had. So you got a lot to address, Ben. So I want to give you that floor to respond, because if I'm not mistaken, you were. Did you tell me you used to be a pastor, or you are a pastor, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to be a pastor, and the reason, so there's no ambiguity with regards to my relationship to God. There's just an ambiguity with regards to my relationship with the Black church for the very reasons you guys are explaining on a regular basis. The apathy, the inactivity, the complacency that I saw inside of the churches, which is why my activism is not a part of the Black church. Now, but to unpack a couple things that I just disagree with Yvette on. First of all, we did not need anyone to say one way or the other what they felt about 9/11. The people involved, the government involved, they were dedicated. They didn't need anyone to set a narrative. They didn't care. They moved into action right away. We as Black people have been reactionary for so long that we're waiting. We're always waiting for that next cause. You guys hang on a second. This is ridiculous.
Oh, he's got his kid. You got your kids. That's what kids do, man. Don't even worry about it, bro. Go ahead. A proud father on board. Keep going.
We're always waiting for the next. We're waiting for. What are we waiting on? There was enough already. We should not need any more deaths for us to move into action. And yes, those bodies were not even cold yet, but now we're expecting these people who are quite literally in shock. I think a lot of the reason they sought forgiveness was because they were in shock and didn't know what the hell was going on. It wasn't even 12 hours later that they were in the courtroom, or maybe it was 24 hours later that they were in the courtroom. So here they are in shock, but we're judging them and criticizing them because they did not rise to the level of activism that we would have risen to in that moment, because we have this reflectionary ability to see the bigger picture. These people were in shock trying to survive. And this is the only thing that I'm saying is I don't necessarily understand why they did it, except for they did what was necessary for them. And I think as Black people, we should understand that this, you know what, if something happened to one of our family members and someone came and told us, well, you should have did it like this, we would tell them just go straight to hell. We'll tell them where to go. And so we need to respect that space for that family. But most importantly, why are we waiting for somebody else to mobilize a revolution that enough dead bodies should have mobilized us a long time ago? The narrative should never stop. That's one of the reasons I appreciate DeRay McKesson so much, is because no matter what's going on, he will not let the narrative change with regard to his activism. And that's what we need: persistent, consistent. We can't lay this at the feet of them. They're not, even, let's say that they're not politically astute enough to understand the ramifications of their words. We are. And so we can pick up the banner and fight for them instead of all of these people who are just sitting back and they've made the fight. This is the thing that bothers me. We as people who are observers and the people who can go out and take the fight to white supremacy, we have made the fight about criticizing their forgiveness instead of keeping the narrative focused on bring down white supremacy. They're hurting. We could even just dismiss them. They don't know what they're talking about. Let's keep moving on with the narrative of the destroying white supremacy. But we've laid our anchor on criticizing these Black folks because in their moment and state of shock and depression, they ask for forgiveness. I just think that that's just disingenuous, but it's reactionary, and we should stop waiting on people to die for us to get this revolution kicked off.
So, Yvette, I'm curious to get your take on that. I mean, I think that what Ben makes some very valid points, that these were remarks made by a select group of people who've been victimized. Now I can say that one of the thoughts that I had as well, though, is that I don't know if it's because of the media or if the church community picks up on this or what, but it seemed that just in the general church community, things were a little more passive than I would have wanted them to be. Right? It doesn't seem that the outrage is what it should be, in my opinion. But at the same time, I'm curious to know what you think about this. I mean, Ben makes a really good point that, we should be focused on the issue and not so much focused on what one particular family or whatever says in response to the issue. What do you say to that?
Well, because here's the thing: it's bigger than one particular family. Yes, this is what this one family did. But how often do you see that, dude? Like, people are upset, not at just this one family. People are upset at people you see at the grocery store, and you say, oh, wasn't that awful? Well, he got to answer to God. Why can't he answer to me? Why can't he answer to us? Stop telling me about who has to answer to God, because what you're really doing is abdicating your personal responsibility on this planet. So the reason we're so critical of the family is because it's really bigger than the family. Yes, I can see the family and I can quote the family, and it's a microcosm of what I believe is really a pacifist, domesticated, sort of childlike interpretation of Christianity by many African Americans. And so this interpretation is what I have a problem with. It is embodied in this family. And so I'm critical of this family. But it's this interpretation amongst many African Americans. You see many African Americans abdicate responsibility. What are we going to do about this? Well, God has the final say. Well, that's over. If God has the final say, that's all you got to say. We move on. We won't have to do anything. We ain't got to challenge anybody. God has the final say. Are you going to be in church with white Jesus on Sunday? So everything's fine. And so this is just what boggles my mind. And I just really feel, I understand what the family is going through, but sometimes, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but Black people and Black people in the church, some of y'all have got to learn that you don't always have to make a spectacle. You don't always have to make a scene. You don't always have to show up and say nothing. You can show up and cry and not open your mouth. You can show up and say, I hope you burn in the fire of hell. I mean, hell is in the Bible. Why can't you say, I hope you make it there? Why can't you say, I hope you see Satan soon? If you're going to talk about the Bible, why can't you bring that up? Why is it always, well, I forgive you in my heart of hearts, and dude. And you know, may God have mercy on you. No, man, if where he's going, God ain't even supposed to be there. You know, so
Mm.
I that is my issue. It is a bigger issue than just these people and just this family. It's what I see time and time again, and I think that sort of mindset hinders us from doing the things that being talked about. Being talked about, you know, what we should be doing as a Black community and dealing with these issues. And I think that sort of Christian mindset a lot of the time hinders us from getting in the street and hinders us from doing things we need to be doing.
Okay, so Ben,
I,
I know you want to jump in on this. So I'm gonna give you the last word since I started with Yvette. This should be a fair fight because I mean both y'all throwing haymakers at the issue, not so much at each other, but I'm loving this because I like the idea of all of us in your Black world kind of having different points of view and being okay with that. We need ideas on the table. We need, you know, you don't kill somebody off because they disagree with you. You talk to them so you can learn from them. So we're all growing from this. So I need to ask you this, Ben, but then you can also address what Yvette said as well.
okay.
You know, you mentioned in your video, which I suggest people take a look at. You mentioned that a lot of the advances in civil rights occurred because of leadership within the church. You know, we know Dr. King came out of the church. We know a lot of great things have happened in the Black church. But it does seem that the church has lost a lot of that fire. It does seem that that there's so much division, a lack of focus. You know, I don't know if you what would you call it, little fiefdoms, if you will. Just, you know, pastors sort of you know running their little kingdoms and not wanting to come together to really fight for anything outside of collecting the tithes on Sunday and get, you know, and picking up the building fund and all that. What do you think about that? I mean, where does the Black church sort of stand in our struggle for progress? Other than what Yvette's saying, in terms of just this perception of being very passive.
The Black church has been castrated. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you guys on that. One of the reasons that
did he say did he say castrated?
Yes,
yeah, I'm not confused about that whatsoever. If whatever you want to know bad about the Black church, I worked in it for 16 years. One of the reasons I'm not a pastor right now is because I saw how fearful and cowardly they were with regard to Jeremiah Wright in 2008. And I said, if y'all Negroes don't have enough sense and wherewithal to back a man who's saying the same things that you say in your pulpit every single week, I don't want nothing to do with you. So that's why I am not in the pulpit right now. So I have no question, there's no confusion in my mind with regard to the failings of the Black church and the potential of the Black church and what they should be doing, but they're simply not doing because they are raising tithes on Sunday morning. Now, I can't say that categorically because nothing is categorical, right? I can say that from a lot of my experiences, which is why I'm not there. But at the end of the day, the difference is not between someone who's a believer and someone who's a Christian and someone who's not. That's not the delineating factor. The delineating factor is the difference between people who do something and those who don't. Because you can look at any of the great leaders, not just historically, but people that we admire now, Carnell West or Michael Eric Dyson or anybody, whatever side of that argument you fall on, they both subscribe to the Christian faith, and their faith is a mobilizer. You have Christians whose faith mobilizes them to action. Some of the people on the very front lines of what's happening right now, they're not only Christian, but they're God forbid, they're gay. You know, I better not say that sometimes on this channel, but they are not what we expect them to be as a Black community sometimes. But it's not about what they believe. It's not about their identity. It's about whether or not they've had enough and whether or not they're actually doing something. Now, one last thing with abdicating our responsibilities, by virtue of us putting down our arms, our rhetorical or literal arms, because these families sought forgiveness, we have likewise abdicated our responsibility to take the fight to Dillon Roof, to South Carolina, to white supremacy as a whole. We are laying down because they didn't do something that we liked, that we thought they should do. We thought they should have behaved differently. And now we're just making the fight all about whether or not they forgave or whether or not they should have. I have seen in a lot of Black militant groups and a lot of Black militant ideologies, the same type of abdication. And it's like, you know what, where church people are sitting around waiting on Jesus to come back, which drives me crazy, because if he comes, he might not come for 100,000 years. And we'll still be here playing tiddlywinks. But I've seen the same type of twisted mentality in Black militants who are sitting around waiting on the revolution, always training for the revolution, always getting ready to do something and never actually doing. The difference is between who's ready to do something and who's ready to just lay down and just wait on somebody else to do it. And that's what disappoints me about this, is because we should never have based our response on how those families reacted, because they are wounded. They might have said Christmas was next week and the sky is green. They've lost it. We should never have looked to them for leadership when we already have everything we need to make us mad enough to go out and tear some stuff up, either literally or rhetorically, but get it done.
Wow. Let the church say amen. Loved it. That was amazing. I love this conversation. I learned so much. I grew from listening to both of you, and I do think it is important to remember that the black church is heterogeneous. You even to clump the black church together is just really a difficult thing to do because you've been to different churches. They're big, they're small. Some of them do a lot of work. Some of them do nothing. Some of the pastors are doing the right work. Some of them are crooked as hell, right? Some of them might touch your children. Some of them might, lift your community, right? So you have a huge variety of representation in the black church. And we can't presume that every black person in America who goes to church every Sunday is somehow ignorant or somehow lost, right? And I know Yvette's not saying that at all. But at the same time, I think that everything should be laid on the table for criticism or critique, and that's exactly what you guys did, and I loved it. I am so glad you guys had this conversation. Thank you very much.
Yvette, hey Yvette, thank you for not completely eviscerating me. I was a little nervous.
Yeah, Yvette's like, wait, I don't eviscerate people. She just does this in her sleep.
I'm sure Christians are very happy with you right now.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's going to be interesting. Well, what'll be interesting to me is I can't wait to see what the people watching will have to say because there are so many smart people who watch these conversations and they have valid points to add as well. And I want to encourage anybody watching to consider yourself part of this conversation. You are part of our family. We're not the only so-called smart Negroes in the room. Everybody who's here is here because they care about the black community. They are looking for answers and they believe in action. So first I want to say thank you to Miss Yvette. I appreciate your time.
Anytime.
All right, everybody, this is Yvette Carnell at breakingbrown.com. Please go to her site and give her money. Like, give her at least $5. That's what I want you to $5. The $5 plan. Give her $5 today.
Tomorrow's payday. Tomorrow's Friday.
There you go. Tomorrow's Friday, so you can make that $7. $7. That's the cost of a drink at the club. Well, I don't know. I don't even know how much drinks at the clubs cost. Are they 10, 12, 15? I don't know. I ain't.
Yeah, you've been out of a while.
Yeah, I guess I ain't been there. That's what it was in 1994. No, anyway, Ben, but Ben and everybody else, everybody, this is also Mr. Benjamin Dixon. His website is thebenjamindixonshow.com. Do you have a donation button on your page, Ben?
No donations. I'm trying to get away from the church. No.
Yeah, right.
No
Ben
donations.
will have the collection plate waiting for you when you enter his website for the building fund. Yeah, well, if people can support Ben, I hope that you will. I work with these two people for a reason because I have so much respect for them, so much brilliance and capability, and this is far better than anything you'll get on any television channel. I guarantee you that. We'll talk about those issues that other people run away from. So thank you everybody for watching. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.